So I'm in the process of making a cinema rig for the Lumix S9, and I have it in front of me here. It's almost done. I'm still tweaking a couple of things, but I thought it'd be interesting to go over a handful of little pieces of rigging equipment that have kind of been my favorite so far in 2025. So I have 5 things for you today, all of which are actually on this rig, but we're going to get to this full breakdown of this rig coming out on Tuesday, in a few days from the time I've released this video. If it's already out, you'll see it in the links up here. So I have 5 pieces of rigging equipment for you today that I think are just great. I'm really a big fan of, and that I'm probably going to use in almost all of my rigs from here on outwards when I can. First off, I want to talk about monitors, and I have 2 favorite monitors to use in my use case for cameras at the moment, one of which is in your pocket. Phones are actually incredibly powerful pieces of equipment for camera rigging. My one is all scratched up and very old, but using your phone as a monitor on a camera, first off, it's incredibly cheap because you probably already have one in your pocket, and 2, it's really easy to use. Most cameras nowadays, most modern ones, you can actually not only view your camera through your phone, but you can also control your camera wirelessly. So this is actually one of my ideas for the Lumix S9, because with the recent update through the Lumix Lab app, and you can do this with a lot of Sony cameras as well, I can monitor my camera wirelessly from my phone. So instead of having to spend a lot of money on a monitor, all I have to do is set my phone up on a cheap little phone mount on top of my camera. It works really, really well. So if you are looking at building a cinema rig, but you don't have much of a budget, use your phone. That'll save you $200 to $300 rather than having to buy an entire monitor. However, if you do want to buy a monitor, this one is probably my new favorite. This one is by Andy Cine. It is the X5L, and it is a really cool little monitor. Now, there's a couple of things about this that I think a lot of people are not gonna like. One in particular, and that is that there is no battery compartment. As you can see here, there's no place to put a battery. Most of these cameras, you use NPF batteries like these, and you can put them on the back of the monitor, and it'll power the monitor for as long as you need, meaning you can hot swap the batteries and sort of use them like that. The problem with that is whenever you have it on a rig like this, and you have a giant big battery sticking out the back here, it really gets kind of cumbersome and gets in the way, and most of the time people use dummy batteries instead, or like a DC power. Now, it has a built-in battery, and on full brightness, which is like 12 or 1300 nits, I believe, as you can see, that's pretty bright there, it'll last up to like 2 to 2.5 hours, which is very, very impressive. Now, it has basically every setting that you could possibly need on here. You've got all your waveforms, your vector scopes, your histograms, focus assists, overexposures, like false colors, and your zebras, all that kind of stuff. You can also de-stretch anamorphic footage, which is incredibly handy. You can put your guides on there, so if you're wanting to shoot stuff and you want to be careful about shooting vertical, all that kind of stuff. It has everything. Also, it's the perfect size. Most of the time, monitors come in a 5 or a 7-inch configuration, and 5 inch is pretty small when it comes to, it's sort of helpful for smaller cameras, and 7 inches are quite large. This is a 6-inch monitor. It's kind of that perfect in between. This has quickly become one of my favorite monitors. To power it, it has the built-in battery, which is in here. The build of this thing is great. It's kind of like a nice sort of metal build, and it's really, really thin. The HDMI port is here on the side. You've got a whole bunch of ports. You've got a headphone port, you've got an HDMI port, you've got a USB-C here. This one is just for upgrading. So if you want to upgrade any firmware, you can do that there. But on the bottom, it has another USB-C port, which is used for charging. And it says here it's a 9-volt input for charger. So what I like to do is when I have this on a rig, I can basically plug my HDMI into the camera, and then I can just use a USB-C from the battery straight into the monitor. So then if I want to detach the whole thing from a rig, all I have to do is disconnect a USB-C cable, because the USB-C, it just keeps the battery charged. And then if I want to go for a smaller handheld kind of package, I only need to, I have 2.5 hours of battery life on this. Obviously, the downside to that is once it dies, you have to charge it or plug it in. You can't just slap a new battery on there. But for my use case, I think it's kind of perfect. I like to go back and forth between a big rig and a small rig, kind of like I did in my last rig video for the ZV-E10 Mark II. So anyway, this has very quickly become my new favorite monitor. Highly recommended. I'm a big fan. Andy Cine are doing some cool stuff. And I just like that it takes up so little space without sacrificing any functionality other than hot swappable batteries, which to me kind of always got in the way anyway. Next up is a power solution. So as you can see on the back of this rig that I have at the moment, I don't have a V-mount, I have an NPF plate. Now this is a little NPF plate by K-Star, whatever it's called, and it is very, very simple, right? It's got a screw that mounts onto like a cheese plate or any sort of attachment. It's got this nice rubber stuff on the back, and that really helps it from like moving. So, with it only having one screw, you would think it would start to like you know, lose its friction and stuff, but this kind of rubber sort of foam stuff on the back really helps keep it locked into place, and I haven't had any problems with that. The thing I love about this one is just the sheer amount of connections that you can get to your camera. First off, as you can see on the top here, it has 2 USB ports. Now this is my only complaint with this whole device, is that on the top you have a USB-A, which is an output, and you can charge your devices or power your devices like the monitor. That's usually what I do, is run USB straight into the monitor, and it has USB-C. Now my only complaint with this device is that the USB-C is input only, so you use that to charge the battery. It's not an output. I wish it was like either or. I know a couple other devices that can do that. I just wish that this had, you know, omnidirectional USB-C. Now on either side of the plate, you have these little DC ports. So this side on here, it is a 12 volt, and on this side, it's an 8.4 volt. So depending on what it is that you're powering, you're gonna want to use either side. Now you do need to be careful with that. Obviously, you do not want to be powering a camera that requires 8 volts or 9 volts out of the 12 volt port, because you could potentially do some damage there. So just make sure that you check your device that you're powering from either side. And one of my favorite things is that on the bottom, it actually has a DTAP port, which is quite rare to find on these NPF plates, to find a full DTAP port on the bottom there, so you can power basically anything. You can use dummy batteries, you can use whatever you want. So you've got a ton of connectivity from this thing. Now the reason that I really love using these NPF plates for NPF batteries is because, first off, they're far cheaper than V-mounts. Okay, V-mount batteries are very, very expensive. I think the cheapest ones you can kind of find at the moment are probably around $100 per battery. But on the flip side, you can get loads of different NPF batteries at loads of different sizes, right? Well, all the way up to like 970s, right? Something big like this one. And you can get these for incredibly cheap. You can get 4 970s for $100 or 1 V-mount for $100. So for example, this little tiny one, right? This is a 770. This is the sort of medium size, which again are even cheaper, and they're small. This is a 38 watt hour. Okay, so this thing is like just over a third of 1 V-mount battery, and you can get probably 6 or 7 of them for the price of 1 V-mount battery. So granted, they're a little bit smaller, but for a lot of these small cameras, right? So if you're rigging up something really small like a ZV-E10, an S9, or like maybe a Z30 or something from Nikon, using little NPF batteries is so much easier to rig up than using V-mounts, because V-mounts are so much bigger. They've gotten a whole lot smaller than they used to, but this is just a nice in-between. And you have all the different size options. So you can go for something kind of small and compact. You could even go for something as small as the 570s, which takes up absolutely no space at all in the back, or go up to one of these really big ones here, which is what I like to do, because it can power your camera for a ridiculous amount of time. So I'm a huge fan of these. I just think that they're incredibly handy. I also use these. I'll frequently just attach a clamp on the back of one of these and just clamp it to a C-stand, and then I can power devices on my stands. If I want to attach this light that I'm using currently, can be charged over USB-C as well. So if I want to make this wireless, I can just clamp this onto the C-stand and run a USB cable straight into the light, and I'm good to go. Next thing on this rig that I'd love to talk about is this side handle. Handles are not massively important. I find them incredibly handy, no pun intended, but I'm a big fan of handles, and this is my favorite one. Now this is by Tilta. This is actually the very first cinema rig that I ever built used this handle. It's a NATO rail on one side, and it's just a really nice, cool looking wooden handle on the other. Now the main thing about this that I love is that the distance from the handle to the NATO rail is really small, right? So it's a lot of these handles, they end up sticking out from the side of the rig really far. This is really compact, right? So you can see, especially when I put it on the S9 here, it's super close. The distance between the handle and the camera is like, it's incredibly close, which makes it nice and compact, which I'm a big fan of. Now the problem is, on some cameras, doing this can block some of your ports on the side. With the S9 it's not a problem, but again, we're going to talk about that on a future date. Handles are that one part of the rig that I really don't mind spending a little bit of extra money on, because they really add a cool look and feel to your camera. And I know that doesn't actually impact the image at all of what you're trying to capture, but it kind of, like, whenever your camera looks cool, and again, I know this sounds silly, but when your camera looks cool, it kind of motivates you to use it more, in my opinion. And you're a little bit more excited about it, and to an untrained eye, it does make your camera look more impressive. To me, it's just something that I think is fun to invest into. Now, number 4 on this list, I discovered by watching one of Caleb Pike's recent videos. Now, I've had this for a long time, but I never thought to use it like this, which is whenever you build up your cinema rig, maybe you have like the whole V-mount battery and the base plate and all of those kinds of things, Using a Fallcam quick release system to be able to pop your camera on and off of its base plate is simply genius. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Now it has its own little problems that you might need to deal with. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the video for the S9, but I absolutely love these little quick release plates. You can get these in kits and you can get them with their their tripods and stuff as well. But I really like this little kit here. It's got just a little quick release button on the side, some stoppers at the back, so those little silver pieces there, that's kind of just a stopper. So whenever you do mount your camera and get that locked into place, it doesn't go anywhere. I mean, it is really well locked in there. And all you got to do, press in this little button and it releases it. I love this. For things like their tripods and stuff, I wasn't actually a huge fan of their tripods. I thought they were a little bit overpriced, but this little quick release system is fantastic. And then one of the main things I like about this is that their little plate, right, the little quick release plate is super thin. A lot of the time, if you're adding like extra Arca Swiss layers or stuff like that, it can really increase the height of your rig. But these are so low profile and so simplistic that they take up so little space. And they're just incredibly versatile, incredibly usable, and I think they're highly recommended. Another thing I really love about this base plate, compared to the Arca Swiss ones that I've used before, is just the sheer amount of mounting points. You got 4 or 5 mounting points here, so attaching this onto a rig with 2 points of contact instead of just the 1 is incredibly easy. Now the last thing I wanted to mention is this. This is by Nicey Rig, and all this is a tripod plate, okay? This is their Arca Swiss version. They also make it for the Manfrotto 501 plate, but what it is just literally a quick release plate. That's that part in the middle here. So this little section is their quick release section, but it has these great little feet on the bottom of these legs that are really sturdy, and they look really good, and they don't get in the way at all, and it keeps your camera sort of flat and sort of locked in place, because oftentimes when we build these rigs and they're sitting on these incredibly thin little tripod plates, they kind of wobble all over the place or they're not very stable. Having something like this, which just has these feet built onto it, just to give it a little bit more stability when you set it on a table or on a surface, is fantastic. I'm a big fan, and they're not very expensive. I think they're like 20 or 30 bucks, which isn't too bad. It is a little bit of a luxury. Obviously your tripod comes with a tripod plate, so you could just save the money and not buy one. But I'm a big fan. The other nice thing, again, for the S9 rig that we're going to be talking about in a couple of days, is that they have tons of mounting points all over them, right? So they got plenty of little screw holes here all along the middle, but then even on the back, you got some space here that you can attach things on the back of the rig. Even one on the front here if you wanted to add something. I have no idea what you would add there, but at least you have that option. So I think these are great. I think they're really cool little accessories. Again, just to add a bit of stability to your whole rig. But anyway, those are the things that I thought I'd share with you. If you have any questions or any thoughts on building rigs in general, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are in the comments down below. I'm thinking of doing this maybe once every quarter, of talking about new pieces of camera gear that are coming out, or specifically for camera rigs. So if that's something that you're interested in, do let me know in the comments down below. If we do turn this into a bit of a series, we'll try and do a giveaway each time. So if that would be something that is of interest to you, hit the subscribe button and let me know in the comments down below so that I know that this is something that you guys would like. I appreciate all of you for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, do hit the like button, drop a comment down below, or maybe even subscribe as we continue to build this channel. I appreciate all of you for doing so, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.